Welcome back. I'm Kim Bailey. She's Fulyana Osborne, and this is Inside Exec. Today, we're going to look at a situation where you have an intimidating boss. Now, this is an area that's probably less talked about these days than it was, say, 10 years ago, when we all became much freer about accepting that the workplace wasn't always the ideal situation that we had hoped it would be. But for my part, I hear a lot less discussion about this than I used to do. There seems to be a little bit more acceptance that sometimes people rise to their level of frustration, for want of a better word, and that the frustration gets taken out on the things that people that are working with them can't do. And so they become intimidating in the sense that they expect their presence and their position to be reinforced by whatever you do, rather than understanding the limitations of you being able to do those things. They just turn on the intimidation gene and just stand there and just say, well, you will do it or else. And it's the or else that I think is the area that is of most concern. Perhaps more so these days, where employment is a little bit more fluid and a little bit less stable, and we don't have the same physical interactions with people in the workplace that we might have in the past. And so an intimidating boss these days might not necessarily be the boss that yells in the office. It might be someone who constantly sends emails or constantly expects you to be on Zoom in meetings and demands results without really understanding what is going into getting those results.
When somebody finds their boss intimidating, I think it's important to try and figure out exactly what is it, if you can. What's intimidating about that person? Kim mentioned the different things like the shouting, the emails in the middle of the night needing an answer straight away, expect you to be on Zoom, etc. When you find that, when you narrow it down, it'll help you. The most important thing that will help you work with the situation is getting to know your boss. Now, when I say getting to know, for those people who find their boss intimidating will say, oh, you think I can really get to know that person? There's a big scale about knowing your boss. Knowing them to the extreme is getting to go out, have a coffee with them or whatever, getting to know about them, their family, etc. at one end. At the other end is getting to understand their behavior as they interact with you and others in the work situation. Their behavior could be that when you go into the meeting, is that meeting pre-planned? Do you know what the topics to be covered? And as we covered in other topics, it's that preparation for the meeting. Be prepared on what you agreed to meet. If your boss is the sort of person that you agreed to meet about A, B, and C, and you come super prepared, but he start talking or she start talking about, X, Y, and Z, then be prepared for that. Because if you sit and think about their behavior so far and how you interacted, then they don't limit themselves to the topics. So you already know that. That means you're armed with something about them. So you do know them. Be prepared about that. Also be prepared to say, sorry, I haven't got that totally sorted. I was prepared for this. I can touch on this, but I can come back to you. And then sense the urgency. If the person wants it straight away, give them a very sharp deadline. I'll come back to you this afternoon with a bit, flesh it out a bit more. By doing that, the frustration, you will not feel intimidated. You feel that you've got control and you feel that you communicated. So that would be an example of the unexpected. The other one to get to know your boss is understand their pattern of behavior in the sense of maybe when they have a board meeting, the week before the board meeting or 2 days, maybe that's a very extremely busy time for them, and there's something happening at the board meeting that might put them in a sort of different frame of mind because there's big issues. It might be a financial matter where the finances aren't going too well and all of that. So he or she are human, so be aware of that, be sensitive to that, but don't let it be a showstopper. What you do is you say, okay, he's probably or she's probably likely to be in a very stressful mood or anxious or whatever because we got the audit or the board or whatever. So I'll be prepared for that. So you don't take it personally then. You go there and you're there to help. You're there to add value and bring to the table some solutions about what you went in for and about some of things that might come up unexpected at the meeting. So the key thing, get to know the person.
I think we also at this point need to acknowledge that sometimes you are working for a bully, and we will call out the bully and the bully behaviour. And if that is the case, if you really honestly believe that what is happening falls into the framework of being bullied for whatever reason, then you need to seek outside assistance with that situation. It is not something that you can fix yourself or within the framework of your organisation. And so I just want to have that as a proviso, because there may be people out there who are feeling that way in terms of the situation they're in. From the other side of things, I'd like you to identify why you find the behaviour intimidating. What is it about the behaviour that you find intimidating? Is it that there are unrealistic demands on report times? Is it the constant communication? What is it specifically in the behaviour that you find intimidating? And if you break it down into those elements, then look at, is it me? Is it my reaction? Or is it genuinely intimidating behaviour? Is it unrealistic behaviour in terms of the situation? So we're going to go back to situational awareness, which we have talked about in other podcasts. But it's as Fulyana says, it's about being situationally aware. So is it board meeting week? Is it audit week? Is it end of financial year week? Whatever it is, does the behaviour only happen in those weeks, or does it happen cyclically? Is it perhaps something completely different that you don't know about that triggers this reaction? Is it that they've got sick family members? Is it something completely outside of the work environment over which they have no control, so that in the work environment where they think they have some control, they then take as much control as they can? Is it their personality? Is that how they have always been? If this is a new situation for you, you haven't worked for this person before, and you find that everyone that worked for this person before thought it was a great place to work, and suddenly you're there and you think it's a bit intimidating. This whole environment is a bit intimidating. Is it you? Is it you having unrealistic expectations about what you need to do to perform in this situation? Or is it the fact that you're not quite fitting into the team? Is it that they have different expectations of you? So there's a whole range of things that you need to look at. If you look at the behaviours first, as Fulyana said, look at, identify what it is, identify why you find it intimidating, what it is about that is intimidating, and then address it from that point on. It might be that you can fix it by communication with the person. It might be that you have to change the way you approach the work and the attitude that you have when you do these things. It might be that it is a situation that needs external help.
On the self-reflection, add another bit of thinking on this, thinking, am I bringing this upon myself? Is it really the person or the boss, or is it me? What I mean by that, I'll give an example. Let's say your boss used to be the head of marketing, and now she is the boss of the whole division. Now you're the head of marketing. Is it you thinking, well, they know more than me? I can never come up, if I come up with this, he might be thinking, oh, is that all you come up with, or whatever. I think that might be something that you bringing upon yourself in that self-doubt. The best thing I can say about that, you're there for a reason. They're not head of marketing anymore. They've got many other things and other hats to wear. And they selected you and put you in that position because you're the right person for their job. Start believing it and delivering with your skill set, which is really good. The other thing is you could do is not taking advantage or taking the responsibility away from yourselves, but try to build a relationship where you could do the bouncing off. For example, look, I came up with half a dozen of these. I know you're really busy, but at another point, if we can fit in 5 minutes to brainstorm, I would appreciate it. But for now, His is one. So you let them know you came up with some ideas with you and your team. You have ranked those ideas if you like, and you've got your own recommendation, but you like their input. Before you know it, you can learn how they think as well. If you haven't worked for them before, they can see your value, but see your own value first, because until you see your own value, you can't keep using it against yourself.
Yeah. I think it's important to understand if it's a situation where you've got someone who was in the role that you're now in and and has moved to being in a different role, that they're still going to look at that role that they were doing and make comparisons. And so are you adding the layer of intimidation simply because you're doing a role that they did before? Or on the other hand, do they feel that because they're not in that role anymore, they have to treat it differently so that they're not seen as favouring you because you're in that role, and so they have to be harder on you as a result, because people will say, oh, they get away with anything because he knows what that role is or she knows what that role is, and so she lets it slide. A whole range of factors might come into what you see as intimidation. So I still go back to the idea of, let's look at what it is that makes you feel like it's intimidating behaviour. Yeah. Identify those and work out why they're happening or why you see them as intimidating, and then decide on some solutions from there, or some courses of action from there. She agreed with me. That's no more to say.
A few times already.
So let's finish there while she's still agreeing with me. I'm Kim Bailey, she's Fulyana Osborne, and this is Inside Exec.